Welcome back to Fanfics in a Nutshell. Today, we're stepping into a timeline where one quiet change reshapes everything you thought you knew about Naruto's story. Not a different battle, not a different enemy, but a different childhood. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing isn't power, it's who teaches you how to use it. So here's the question: what if Naruto was never truly alone? What if, from the very beginning, someone was watching him, guiding him, shaping him, and not just anyone, Madara Uchiha? That is where this story begins to break. At first glance, nothing seems different. The village still whispers, the orphanage still stands, and a young boy with bright eyes still grows up without parents, without answers, without anyone willing to tell him the truth. But this Naruto is not the loud, reckless child Konoha remembers. He is quiet, observant, always watching. Even as a child, there is something unsettling about the way he studies the world around him, the way he listens more than he speaks, the way he notices patterns others ignore. While the other children chase games and attention, Naruto sits at the edges, absorbing everything. And that difference matters, because it means he notices things he shouldn't. The way adults fall silent when he walks into a room. The way certain names are never spoken. The way his questions are always redirected, softened, avoided. For a long time, he says nothing, but he remembers. And slowly, curiosity becomes something sharper, something deliberate. At night, when the orphanage grows quiet, Naruto begins to experiment. At first, it's instinct. A feeling, a strange warmth in his body that he cannot explain. He focuses on it, tries to shape it, tries to understand it. He fails, again and again. But unlike other children, he doesn't give up. Because Naruto doesn't need encouragement, he needs answers. And the more he fails, the more determined he becomes. That should have been the end of it. A curious child, pushing himself too early. But somewhere beyond the village, someone notices. Far from Konoha's walls, hidden in a place forgotten by time, a man watches the world with eyes that have seen too much to be surprised. Madara Uchiha is not supposed to exist. To the world, he is a ghost, a memory, a warning told in stories. But he is alive. And when he feels it, when he senses a presence that should not be possible, he does not ignore it, because it is familiar. Too familiar. At first, he dismisses it as coincidence, a flicker of chakra, a passing anomaly, but it persists. And Madara is not a man who ignores patterns, so he looks closer. And what he finds changes everything. A child, blonde hair, blue eyes, alone. But beneath that surface, beneath the simplicity of what Konoha believes him to be, there is something far older. A bloodline that should have ended. A connection that should not exist. For a long moment, Madara says nothing, because even he does not immediately accept what he is seeing. But truth does not care about expectation. And when he confirms it, the past comes rushing back. Kushina, the daughter he lost, the war that took everything. And now, this child, Naruto, his grandson, for the first time in years, something shifts inside Madara. Not weakness, not regret, but something dangerously close to purpose. Because this is not coincidence, this is legacy. And legacy is something Madara understands better than anyone alive. Back in Konoha, Naruto's life continues as if nothing has changed, but something has. Because now, he is no longer unseen. The first time they meet, it is not dramatic. No explosion, no grand reveal, just a quiet moment. Naruto is alone, as usual, sitting near the edge of the forest, focused on a problem he cannot solve. His hands move through imperfect signs. His breathing is uneven. The chakra refuses to obey him. Frustration builds. He clenches his fists. And then, wrong. The voice is calm, sharp, certain. Naruto freezes. For a second, he doesn't move. Then slowly, he turns. The man standing behind him does not look like anyone from the village. There is something older about him. Not just age, presence, power, restrained but unmistakable. Naruto doesn't panic. That's the first sign. Instead, he studies him. Then show me, Naruto says. No fear, no hesitation, just a challenge. And for a brief moment, Madara almost smiles. Because this child does not act like prey. He steps forward, correcting Naruto's stance with precise movements, adjusting his posture, his breathing, his focus. Again, Madara says. Naruto obeys. This time, the chakra responds, not perfectly, but enough. Naruto's eyes widen, not in amazement, but in understanding. He turns back to the man. You knew how to fix it. Yes. Why? A simple question, but not a simple answer. Madara studies him carefully, because this is the moment that matters, the moment where a path begins. Because, he says finally, you're doing it wrong. Naruto frowns slightly. That's not an answer. No, Madara agrees, but it's enough for now. And strangely, Naruto accepts that. That should have been the end of it. A brief encounter, a strange stranger offering guidance. But the next day, the man returns. And the day after that, and the day after that. At first, the lessons are simple. Chakra control, balance, discipline. Madara does not praise, he does not comfort. He does not explain more than necessary. He corrects, he observes, he pushes. And Naruto responds, faster than expected, stronger than expected. But more importantly, differently, Naruto does not seek approval, he seeks understanding. Every correction becomes a question. Every failure becomes a lesson. And slowly, something begins to take shape. Not just skill, but mindset. Because Madara is not just teaching Naruto how to fight, he is teaching him how to think. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months. And still, no one in Konoha notices. Because Naruto does not show what he learns. That is Madara's first rule. Power shown too early becomes a target, he tells him. Naruto understands. So at the academy, he remains average, unremarkable, just another child. But behind that mask, he is changing. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the village, another thread begins to unravel. Kakashi Hatake had long accepted the past as it was given to him. Loss was nothing new. Truth was often buried. And yet, something about Naruto never sat right with him. The timeline, the silence, the absence of answers. It lingers. And eventually, curiosity becomes action. What he discovers shakes him more than any battlefield ever has. Because Naruto was never supposed to be alone. And someone made sure he stayed that way. That realization does not bring clarity. It brings anger. But more than that, it brings attention. And attention in this story is dangerous. Because Naruto is no longer just an orphan, he is a secret. And secrets have a way of surfacing. Back in the forest, the training continues. Harder now. More demanding. Madara begins introducing fire techniques, precision exercises, tactical thinking. Naruto struggles, fails, improves, and through it all, one question remains, unspoken. Until one day, Naruto finally asks it, "Who are you?" Madara does not answer immediately. Because this is not just a name, it is a revelation, a shift, a point of no return. He looks at Naruto, really looks at him, and for a brief moment, the weight of years presses into the present. Then he speaks, someone who understands what you are. Naruto's expression sharpens. And what am I? Madara's gaze does not waver. That, he says quietly, is something you will earn the right to know. Naruto doesn't like that answer, but he doesn't reject it either. Because something deeper tells him, this matters, more than anything else he has been told. And in that moment, without fully realizing it, Naruto steps onto a path that will take him far beyond Konoha's expectations, far beyond its control, and far closer to a legacy the world believed was buried forever. And that is where everything truly begins to change. The next stage of Naruto's life does not begin with a battle, it begins with routine. That is how Madara shapes him. Not through grand speeches or dramatic revelations, but through repetition so relentless that discipline becomes instinct. Every morning before dawn, Naruto slips away from the orphanage while the village still sleeps. He moves through back paths, avoids the main roads, leaves no pattern anyone could easily follow. By the time the sun begins to climb, he is already standing in front of the old man who has somehow become the most important figure in his life. Madara never says he is proud, but he is always there. And for Naruto, that matters more than praise ever could. The lessons grow harsher. Chakra control gives way to refinement. Refinement gives way to precision. Madara stops correcting only posture and hand signs. Now he corrects breathing, eye movement, hesitation, wasted motion. If Naruto throws a kunai and hits the mark, Madara asks why the angle was imperfect. If Naruto forms a technique successfully, Madara asks how much chakra he wasted doing it. If Naruto wins a small exchange, Madara points out the 5 ways he could have died against the better opponent. At first, Naruto finds it exhausting. Then he begins to understand. Madara is not training him to succeed in a classroom. He is training him to survive in a world that kills the careless. And that realization changes how Naruto listens. Again, Madara says one morning after Naruto finishes a sequence of hand signs. Naruto exhales through his nose. It worked. It was slow. It was still correct. Madara's expression hardens by only a fraction. Correct is what people say right before they are buried. Naruto says nothing. He repeats the sequence, faster this time. Still not fast enough. Again. There is no end to the repetitions. Fire release exercises until his throat burns. Tree climbing until his legs tremble. Leaf balancing until even small lapses in focus feel like humiliation. Madara breaks every skill into smaller and smaller pieces until Naruto is forced to master not just the result, but the mechanism underneath it. The old man is merciless, but he is never careless. When Naruto pushes too far, Madara notices. When his chakra coils strain, Madara adjusts the next drill. When frustration begins clouding judgment, Madara shifts from force to silence, letting Naruto discover the mistake for himself. It is the first form of care Naruto has ever known that does not look gentle, and because he is still a child, he does not have words for that yet. So he translates it into the only language he understands. If Madara keeps coming back, then he has not been abandoned. That thought settles somewhere deep and stays there. In the village, life continues with the same cold routines Naruto has always known. Adults still look away too quickly. The orphanage still feeds him, houses him, and reminds him through 1,000 small acts that existence is not the same as belonging. But something in Naruto has begun to harden against that emptiness. Where loneliness once sat like an open wound, there is now structure, secrecy, purpose. That should have made him easier to overlook. Instead, it makes him stranger. At the academy, he is still not loud, still not foolish, still too watchful for most children to understand. Instructors do not quite know what to make of him. He does not seek attention. He rarely misbehaves. He does not perform brilliance openly. But every now and then, in some tiny moment, something slips through. A perfectly timed dodge. An answer given too quickly and then disguised. A look in his eyes that feels older than it should. People notice in fragments. No one yet sees the whole. That is exactly how Madara wants it. Concealment, he tells Naruto one afternoon, is not lying. It is choosing what the world has earned the right to know. Naruto turns a kunai in his hand, thoughtful. And if they haven't earned anything? Then give them nothing. The answer is simple, cold even. But Naruto does not reject it. Because from his view, the village has given him very little. Food, shelter, silence, fear, whispered contempt, rules without affection. Madara, for all his sharpness, gives him something far more dangerous, meaning. And that is when the bond between them truly deepens. It happens gradually, almost invisibly. Not through confessions or declarations, but through habit. Madara begins bringing Naruto scrolls to study, old and worn and far beyond academy level. He quizzes him on tactics, makes him map engagement routes through forest terrain, forces him to explain not only what an enemy might do, but why. Every answer must lead to another question. Every assumption must survive pressure. Naruto starts asking questions in return. Not just about chakra, about clans, wars, villages, power. Why do shinobi villages need children? He asks once, after a long lecture on military deterrence. Madara looks at him for a moment. Because adults break too slowly. Children can be shaped before they understand the cost. Naruto absorbs that in silence. On another day, while resting after training, he asks, "Did you ever trust anyone?" This time, the pause is longer. "A few," Madara says. "What happened to them?" "The world happened." It is not a comforting answer. But Naruto is beginning to understand that Madara never wastes softness on falsehood. If he speaks, he means it. If he withholds something, it is because he has chosen to, and because of that, his words carry weight. Elsewhere, another relationship is beginning to strain against old lies. Kakashi Hatake has seen enough deception in his life to recognize its shape. At first, it is only instinct, the uneasy suspicion that Naruto's circumstances were not simply tragic, but arranged. Then suspicion becomes inquiry. Inquiry becomes anger. Records do not line up. Conversations stop too quickly when he enters a room. Decisions around the boy's placement, protection, and isolation feel less like oversight and more like intent. By the time Kakashi fully understands that Naruto's loneliness was allowed, perhaps even engineered, his grief has curdled into something much sharper. He goes to the third. The conversation is quiet. That makes it worse, because raised voices can be dismissed as emotion. Silence is where the truth usually hides. When Kakashi leaves, he has not gotten everything he wants, but he has forced something open. Tsunade, drawn by threads of guilt and old loyalty, is pulled closer into the matter as well. For the first time in years, Naruto's existence begins to matter politically, not just personally. But he does not know any of this yet. And that ignorance buys Madara time. Time becomes more valuable with every passing month. Naruto's body strengthens. His chakra control improves at a rate that begins to border on frightening. Fire release comes to him with difficulty at first, not because he lacks talent, but because the chakra resists his temperament. He is not yet all sharpness and domination. There is still restraint in him, still uncertainty. Madara recognizes that and refuses to let him force progress through impatience. "Again," he says after another sputtering attempt. Naruto scowls. "You keep saying that as if saying it more changes anything." Madara folds his arms. "No, your work changes things. My disappointment is simply consistent." Naruto stares at him. Then, against his will, laughs. It catches both of them by surprise. The sound is brief, rough, unpolished from lack of use. But once it fades, something in the air has changed. Madara does not laugh with him, but the edge in his expression softens by the smallest amount. That moment matters more than either of them admits. Because for all the severity of the training, Naruto is still a child. And beneath the discipline, beneath the bloodline, beneath the legacy beginning to rise around him, there is a simple hunger he cannot completely bury. He wants someone to stay. For a while, it seems as though he has found that in two places. The first is Madara. The second is Tsukimi. She is not a grand figure in the village, not a legendary shinobi, not a political player, just one of the few adults in the orphanage who treats Naruto as though he is human before he is inconvenient. She speaks to him kindly, notices when he is quieter than usual, slips him extra food sometimes without making him feel pitied. She asks nothing from him except honesty, and even that she never forces. Madara gives Naruto strength, Tsukimi gives him warmth. And because he has so little experience with either, he clings to both more fiercely than he realizes. That is why her death cuts so deeply. It comes without ceremony, the way loss often does in the shinobi world. One day she is there, the next she is not. Illness, overwork. The village moves on quickly because the village always moves on quickly. There is no room in Konoha's machinery for grief that does not affect power. But Naruto is not machinery. When he learns she is gone, he does not cry in front of anyone. He does not scream. He does not ask why life keeps taking the few people who offer him kindness. He simply goes silent in a way that feels different from before. He trains that evening until his hands split open. Madara watches him for a long time before speaking. You are unfocused. Naruto keeps moving. Then I'll fix it. No, Madara says, you are trying to outrun pain. That has never worked for anyone. Naruto's next strike against the training post lands crooked. What would you know about it? The instant the words leave his mouth, the air turns still. Not because Madara is angry, because he is not. He simply looks at Naruto with an expression so old, so unreadable, that Naruto feels the weight of every year the man has lived. Enough, Madara says quietly. Naruto's shoulders tense. He expects punishment, correction, cold distance. Instead, Madara steps closer and places a hand on his shoulder. A small thing, a restrained thing. But for Naruto, it is almost unbearable. You do not dishonor the dead by hurting, Madara says. You dishonor them by becoming empty. Naruto stares at the ground. The grief he has been forcing inward shifts then, no longer rage, not entirely sadness, but something heavier. Recognition. The terrifying possibility that this pain matters because she mattered. When he finally speaks, his voice is low. She was kind to me. Madara's hand withdraws, then remember her kindly? That night, Naruto does cry, alone, and when morning comes, he is different, not softer, more resolved. Loss has always existed in his life as absence. Unknown parents, unanswered questions, a blank space where family should have been. But Tsukimi's death teaches him something worse than emptiness. It teaches him what it means to lose someone he actually knew. After that, the question he has been circling for months can no longer remain unasked. Training ends early that evening. The light is fading through the trees, orange and brittle, and the quiet between them feels heavier than usual. Naruto sits on a fallen log, hands still, eyes fixed on the ground. Why do you keep coming back? He asks. Madara says nothing. Naruto lifts his gaze. You train me. You protect secrets I don't even understand. You act like this matters. His expression sharpens. So why? Madara meets his stare without flinching. Because it does matter. That's not enough. It is for now. No. Naruto rises to his feet. There is grief in him still, but now it has fused with anger and something even more dangerous, need. I'm tired of pieces. I'm tired of being told to wait. If I matter, then tell me why. Madara watches him carefully. This is not the tantrum of a child. Naruto has outgrown that kind of helplessness. This is a demand shaped by discipline, by hurt, by months of earned trust. And because of that, it cannot be dismissed. You want truth, Madara says. Yes, the truth has consequences. Then let it. Another silence. The forest seems to hold its breath around them. Then Madara speaks. Your mother's name was Kushina. Naruto goes perfectly still. Not because the name means everything yet, because it means something. A real thing, a human thing. Not a sealed report or a redirected answer or a polite evasion. A name. Madara continues. She was strong, impulsive, harder to break than anyone understood. And she was mine. Naruto blinks once. Yours? My daughter. The word lands like a physical blow. For a moment, Naruto cannot think. The world narrows to pieces that do not fit together. Kushina. Daughter. Mine. The old man standing in front of him. The impossible gravity of what he is hearing. Madara's voice remains level. That makes you my grandson. The forest changes after that, not literally, the wind still moves through the leaves. Light still dies slowly at the edge of evening, but Naruto feels as if the ground beneath him has shifted into something less certain. He has imagined many truths. None of them look like this. You're lying, he says, but there is no conviction in it. Madara's eyes harden. I do not lie about blood. Naruto turns away, pacing once, then twice, then stopping, as if his own body no longer knows what to do with itself. Grandson. The word feels too large to touch. He has spent his life as no one's child, no one's priority, no one's responsibility. And now the man who has trained him in secret, corrected him, tested him, stayed with him through grief and effort and silence, is telling him that all of it is tied to something deeper than chance. Family. The idea is almost harder to bear than loneliness. Why didn't you say it before? Naruto asks, voice tight. Because names are not gifts, Madara says. They are burdens. You were not ready to carry this one. Naruto closes his eyes briefly. And now? Now you ask for the truth knowing it might wound you. That answer is so brutally precise that Naruto cannot reject it. He looks back at Madara, really looks this time. At the old scars. The impossible presence. The weight he has always carried without explanation. So many things make more sense now, and somehow that only makes the world feel stranger. My mother, Naruto says slowly. What happened to her? Madara's face becomes unreadable again. She died the night you were born. The words are expected and still devastating. And my father? A good man, Madara says after a pause, which is somehow the most revealing answer he has given all day. Dead beside her. Naruto's throat tightens. He had always known, somewhere deep down, that his parents were gone. But knowledge without detail is fog. This is sharper, colder, it leaves edges. Who killed them? Madara's gaze turns distant for half a second, as if looking not at Naruto, but through years of war and ruin. That answer is longer, he says, and uglier. I didn't ask for easy. No, he didn't. Madara steps closer, and now when he speaks, his voice carries the first hints of the deeper history he has guarded so carefully. You were born into a world built on old hatred dressed as order. Your parents died because powerful men make desperate choices, and then call those choices necessary. Because villages protect themselves first and justify the cost later. Because bloodlines, Jinchuriki, clan politics, and fear create storms that consume the innocent with the guilty. Naruto listens without moving. Madara's eyes narrow slightly. Your life was decided by forces older than you. But that does not mean your future must be. That is the moment the truth stops being a wound and begins becoming a direction. Naruto is still shaken, still grieving things he has only just learned he lost. But under the confusion, under the ache, under the anger rising at everything kept from him, another feeling begins to form. Clarity. The village hid him from his own history. Madara did not. The village gave him survival. Madara is offering him inheritance. And inheritance, Naruto is beginning to understand, can be more powerful than kindness. What happens now? He asks. Madara studies him, measuring the boy against the weight of the answer. Now, he says, you decide whether blood means anything to you at all. Naruto does not answer immediately. He thinks of Tsukimi, of the orphanage, of empty rooms and careful silences, of every time someone looked at him and saw a burden before a person. He thinks of Madara correcting his stance in the forest, of relentless drills, of hard truths spoken without pity, of a hand on his shoulder when grief became too heavy to carry alone. It is not a difficult choice. He lifts his chin. Train me, Naruto says. Not like before, really train me. Madara's gaze sharpens. To what end? Naruto's voice does not waver. So no one can ever decide my life for me again. For the first time since revealing the truth, something like approval flickers in Madara's expression. Not warmth, not softness, something fiercer. Recognition. Good, he says, and with that single word, the next phase begins. Because Naruto has not merely learned a name, he has chosen a direction. He is no longer just a quiet child being shaped in secret. No longer just an orphan with unusual instincts and hidden lessons. Now he is a boy standing at the edge of legacy, aware at last that strength is not simply a tool for survival. It is the language of freedom in a world built to deny it. And from this point on, Madara stops training him like someone who might one day become capable. He begins training him like an heir. From that day on, the tone of Naruto's training changes in ways even he cannot fully understand at first. Before, Madara had been teaching him as though he were testing raw ore in a furnace, seeing what would bend, what would break, what might one day become something useful. Now there is no more uncertainty in the old man's methods, no more holding back the shape of his intent. Every exercise becomes sharper, every lesson carries more weight. Madara no longer trains Naruto like a promising child. He trains him like blood. That difference reaches into everything. The hand signs come first, not because they are glamorous, but because Madara insists that true power begins with control, too precise for anyone else to notice. Naruto is made to repeat the 12 foundational seals until his fingers ache, then repeat them again until the pain no longer matters. Madara corrects individual knuckles, wrist angles, breathing cadence, the distance between one seal and the next. Sloppy execution is not allowed. Fast execution without precision is mocked. Precision without speed is dismissed as incomplete. At first, Naruto finds it maddening. Then he begins to understand that Madara is dismantling weakness at its roots. Fire release follows. The first great fireball Naruto sees from Madara is less a jutsu than a declaration. Flame surges outward in a house-sized mass that seems to swallow the riverbank itself, steam hissing from the water as the heat rolls through the trees. For a second, Naruto can only stare, struck silent not by fear, but by recognition. This is what he has been reaching toward without having the language to name it. Power with shape, power with lineage, power that feels old. His first attempt is pathetic by comparison, a burst of flame barely larger than a cat. Madara laughs at him for it, not cruelly, but without mercy either, and Naruto responds the way he always does when humiliation stings. He tries again, and again, and again. Hours later, his fire is still rough, still smaller than it should be, but controlled in a way that should not be possible for a child his age. Madara notices more than the result. He notices Naruto's reserves, the way his chakra recovers, the way his body strains but does not collapse, the way every repetition seems to teach him something permanent. It is then that Madara fully accepts what blood has already told him. Naruto is not merely talented, he is dangerous. That realization does not frighten him, it satisfies him. But this new phase is not built on technique alone. Madara understands that a shinobi destroyed by a shallow worldview is no less a fool for being strong. So as the years begin moving around them, he widens the lessons. Some days are for jutsu, some are for taijutsu, some are for chakra theory. But more and more often, training becomes conversation sharpened into doctrine. What is the difference between a village and a clan? Madara asks once while Naruto balances upside down on a branch, forcing chakra through the soles of his feet and into muscles already trembling from overuse. Naruto answers without hesitation, a village is bigger. Madara's expression remains flat. That is scale, not difference. Naruto exhales slowly, adjusts his footing, thinks. A village asks for loyalty from strangers. A clan expects it from blood. Madara says nothing for a moment. Then, better. Naruto knows by now that better means correct enough to continue. Another time, Madara asks, why do people obey Kage? Because they're strong. No. Naruto frowns. Because they protect people? No. The answer comes after a long silence, and when it does, it feels like a blade being slid across stone. People obey power when they believe resistance will cost more than submission. Everything else is decoration. Naruto does not accept every lesson immediately. That is part of what fascinates Madara. For all the blood in him, Naruto is not a vessel waiting to be filled. He pushes back, questions, tests ideas against instinct. He does not reject Konoha simply because Madara expects it. He does not worship strength blindly just because he is being taught by the man who once turned strength into legend. He absorbs, weighs, compares. That makes him slower to shape, but far harder to fool. At the academy, that hidden development begins to change the air around him. Naruto still keeps his abilities buried beneath the surface. He lets other students underestimate him. Lets instructors assume he is merely quiet, merely strange, merely competent enough not to be noticed. But there are moments when concealment slips, not because he is careless, but because instincts trained in secret begin surfacing under pressure. A spar ends too quickly. A thrown shuriken lands with impossible precision. A written test exposes a mind far more analytical than the teachers expected. The reactions are subtle at first. A pause, a look, a comment not meant to carry across the room. But children sense status almost as well as shinobi sense killing intent, and before long Naruto finds himself occupying an uncertain place among his peers. He is no longer dismissed. He is watched. That includes Sasuke Uchiha. At first, the connection between them is only blood recognizing an echo of itself. Sasuke is proud, wounded, bright with talent and isolation. Naruto sees that immediately. Sees also the way others circle him, project onto him, reduce him to symbols he never asked to carry. It irritates Naruto not because he pities Sasuke, but because he recognizes the mechanism. The village takes children, wraps them in expectations and secrets, then acts surprised when the result comes back sharp-edged. Madara notices Naruto noticing. He is weak, Madara says once after Naruto mentions the younger Uchiha in passing. Naruto looks up from cleaning a kunai. He's strong for his age. Madara's gaze hardens. Strength without context is vanity. Strength ruled by grief is a leash waiting for the right hand. Naruto understands the lesson beneath the insult. Sasuke is not being judged for his current ability. He is being judged for what has been done to him, for the shape of the wound in him, for the danger of defining oneself entirely through loss. That lesson matters more than Naruto realizes at the time, because then the massacre happens. The news moves through Konoha like poison in water. At first it is rumor, too grotesque to accept, then it becomes certainty. The Uchiha clan is gone, the district is silent. An entire bloodline that once stood at the center of the village's founding has been reduced overnight to absence and suspicion and one surviving child. Sasuke. Naruto hews the details in fragments, each one worse than the last. The killer was one of their own. Itachi Uchiha. Prodigy. Son. Brother. Executioner. No one seems able to speak of it without fear bending the words out of shape. When Naruto brings it to Madara, expecting perhaps fury, perhaps sorrow, what he receives instead is something colder. Of course, Madara says. Naruto stares at him. That's all you have to say? Madara rises slowly from the bench where he had been seated, leaning more heavily on his cane than usual. Age has not made him weak, but it has made the cost of motion visible in ways it once was not. That is all I need to say, he answers. A clan pushed to the edge inside a village that never trusted it, a leadership too afraid to solve pressure honestly, a prodigy given an impossible order or an impossible fear. This is what institutions do when they are built on old hatred and call it stability. Naruto's jaw tightens. He killed his family. And Konoha will make sure that is the only part children like you are allowed to remember. The words hit harder than Naruto expects. Because somewhere beneath the outrage, he knows Madara is not excusing the act. He is condemning the system that made such an act conceivable. That night, their training does not involve jutsu at all. Instead, Madara tells him history. Not the softened kind taught in public, but the bitter version carried by survivors and traitors, and those old enough to have buried too many names. He speaks of the Uchiha and Senju, of the founding of Konoha, of compromise and betrayal, of how peace built without trust becomes nothing more than delayed conflict. He speaks of power not as glory, but as the final guarantor behind every political promise. Naruto listens for hours, and with every new layer, the world becomes less simple. Konoha is no longer just home, however coldly it has treated him. It is also machinery, calculation, narrative, a place capable of kindness in individuals and cruelty in structure, a place that protects and consumes in the same breath. That complexity does something important to him. It keeps him from becoming easy. He does not leave that conversation hating the village. He leaves it understanding that love without clarity is just another way to be used. From then on, his training grows broader still. Madara begins teaching him how to think through terrain, how to detect intent before movement, how to read the smallest tremors in posture that reveal fear or aggression. Taijutsu becomes less about trading blows and more about controlling pace, distance, and rhythm. Naruto learns that most fights are lost before impact by those who fail to understand tempo. He learns how to conserve motion, how to disguise killing angles inside harmless ones, how to attack not where an opponent is, but where panic will force them next. He also learns patience. That may be the hardest lesson of all. Because Naruto is growing faster now, physically, mentally, emotionally. The academy begins to feel smaller around him. The games of other children seem thin. Their rivalries, loud but shallow. Even his own frustration changes shape. He no longer wants attention. No longer dreams of being acknowledged by people who offer approval only after performance. What he wants is autonomy. Knowledge. A future not written by frightened old men behind closed doors. That is when Kakashi and Tsunade begin to matter more. Not because Madara allows it, but because reality insists. Kakashi has stopped looking at Naruto the way adults usually do. There is weight in his gaze now. Familiarity mixed with guilt, something unresolved. Tsunade, drawn in by old loyalties and newer anger, is even harder to ignore. Through Shizune, through chance meetings, through small interventions that do not feel accidental at all, Naruto begins brushing up against the outlines of another possible life. One in which adults connected to his parents are finally trying. Too late perhaps, but sincerely to close the distance around him. Madara notices that as well. He says nothing direct, but his silence becomes sharper whenever Konoha's names enter conversation. Naruto notices that too. And quietly, without choosing it yet, he begins living between two inheritances. One is blood, secrecy, discipline, history, and the hard language of legacy. The other is fragile, hesitant, human made of people who failed him once and may yet fail him again, but who are no longer content to leave him untouched. He does not know which future will claim more of him. But he is no longer the kind of child who can drift into either one by accident. By the end of those academy years, that much is certain. He has grown too skilled to remain harmless, too informed to remain obedient, and too emotionally awake to become the simple weapon Madara might once have preferred. The old man sees it. Naruto sees it. Even the village, dimly and without understanding, begins to feel it. Something is forming in its shadows. Not a prodigy in the ordinary sense, not a loyal son of Konoha, not merely an Uchiha heir, something more difficult than that. And as the line between training and preparation begins to disappear, Madara finally does what he has been delaying for years. He starts preparing Naruto not just for conflict, but for blood. Madara does not announce the shift. He simply stops treating Naruto like a child who still has time. That is how Part 4 truly begins. The lessons become harder, but not merely in the obvious ways. It is not just longer hours, harsher drills, heavier consequences for mistakes. The deeper change is this. Madara begins designing training around uncertainty, around pressure, around fear. Up until now, Naruto has been shaped in controlled conditions. Difficult conditions, yes. Exhausting, painful, ruthless in their own way. But still controlled, still deliberate, still bounded by the knowledge that Madara is watching, calculating, adjusting. Now those boundaries begin to disappear. One morning, Naruto arrives at the clearing expecting the usual rhythm fire practice, hand sign repetitions, movement drills, analysis. Instead, he finds nothing, no Madara, no instructions, no sign of where the old man has gone. He waits. An hour passes. Then two. By the third, annoyance has sharpened into suspicion. He begins searching. That is the moment the trap closes. A tripwire he never saw snaps under his foot. The log meant to crush him misses by inches only because his body moves before thought can catch up. He rolls, recovers, and is already scanning when the second strike comes from above. Kunai thrown at angles designed to herd rather than kill. Naruto barely avoids them. Then silence. He remains crouched, pulse hammering, every nerve awake. Too slow, Madara's voice says from somewhere in the trees. Naruto looks up, furious. You set traps on me? Madara steps into view, expression unchanged. No, I created a lesson. You walked into it willingly. Naruto's jaw tightens. You could have warned me. Yes, Madara says, and the enemy could politely announce himself as well. Would that make your life easier? Naruto says nothing, because the answer is obvious. Madara descends from the branch and walks past the snapped wire as if the entire event barely matters. From this point forward, he says, I will assume the world intends to kill you. Your job is to prove it cannot. That is the tone of everything that follows. Naruto is no longer just learning techniques. He is being taught to survive contact with reality. Some days, Madara attacks him without warning in the middle of another exercise, forcing him to defend while exhausted. Some days, he gives him contradictory information just to see whether Naruto will obey blindly or stop and think. Some days, he sends him across difficult terrain with no clear goal beyond returning unseen, then critiques every footprint, every broken twig, every place his breathing would have given him away. The old man is relentless. But Naruto is changing fast enough that even Madara begins to take grim satisfaction in what he sees. Stealth comes first. Naruto learns how to move through forest paths without disturbing birdsong, how to enter a village edge and leave without being remembered, how to alter posture and pace just enough that casual witnesses forget his face the moment he passes. Madara insists that survival belongs first to those who can choose when to be noticed. Then comes tracking. Not the academy version, not the simple recognition of bent grass or mud prints. Madara teaches him to read absence as much as presence. A path too clean, a silence too sudden, a pattern in foliage that suggests not passage, but deliberate concealment. Naruto begins learning how fear leaves traces on the world, how haste does, how confidence does. Soon he can tell the difference between a hunter, a scout, a merchant, and a liar from the smallest signs. And then, inevitably, the lessons darken. Madara stops speaking of combat as contest and starts speaking of it as outcome. Do not fight fair, he says one evening as Naruto tends a small fire after training. Fairness is a word used by those who assume someone else will pay the price for their principles. Naruto watches the flames shift in the wind. So that's it? Just win? Madara's gaze is cold, but not careless. No, win with purpose. There is a difference between cruelty and efficiency. Learn it. One will rot you, the other will keep you alive. That line stays with Naruto, because up until now, violence has still been theoretical. Even in sparring, Even in harsh drills, there has always been an invisible border between what he is learning and what it means when flesh, fear, and consequence enter the equation for real. It does not stay theoretical for long. The first test comes disguised as something smaller than it is. Madara gives Naruto a simple assignment: follow a courier trail to the edge of Fire Country, observe a handoff between smugglers moving restricted materials, and return with details. No engagement, no heroics, no unnecessary risk. Naruto is young enough that the mission feels almost like graduation. Madara is old enough to know better. The trail itself is difficult but manageable. Naruto moves carefully, patient and disciplined, and by the second night he finds them, 3 men, camped near a ruined way station, exchanging scroll cases under cover of darkness. Their chakra signatures are weak, not shinobi of any notable class, just desperate men doing dangerous work for someone stronger than they are. Naruto watches from concealment and begins cataloging details exactly as taught: faces, voices, cargo size, routes of approach, escape possibilities. Then one of the men looks directly toward his hiding place. Not because Naruto made a glaring mistake, because chance, instinct, and the ugly randomness of fieldwork sometimes align against preparation. The man stiffens, says something sharp. The others turn. Naruto could flee, he almost does. But one of them moves faster than expected, circling to cut off his retreat route. Another throws a blade, not with shinobi precision, but with enough force to make the point clear. A third reaches for the cargo, likely intending to run and report. Everything becomes immediate. This is no longer observation, it is decision. Naruto drops from concealment and moves before doubt can root him in place. The first man closes clumsily, overcommitting. Naruto sidesteps and strikes the throat exactly the way Madara taught him to disable without losing time. The man collapses choking. The second comes in with panic and a short sword. Naruto catches the wrist, twists, drives an elbow into the ribs, and for a moment it almost feels like training. Then the blade turns in his hand. And suddenly, training is gone. There is a terrible, close, human sound as steel enters flesh. The man freezes, Naruto freezes with him. Neither seems to understand for a second what has happened, then the weight of the body changes, then the blood comes. Warm on Naruto's hand. Darker than he imagined. The third man runs. Instinct saves Naruto from standing there too long. He tears the blade free, chases, tackles the runner before he can disappear into the trees, and ends the struggle more brutally than the first because now fear is in him too. Raw, electric, contagious. When it is over, the forest is silent, too silent. Naruto stands over the bodies, breathing hard, staring at hands that no longer feel like his. He has won. That is the ugliest part, not because victory feels glorious, because it feels possible, because all the lessons that seemed severe in the clearing suddenly reveal themselves as preparation for this exact moment. The angles, the breathing, the throat strike, the control of motion. Madara had not been shaping abstractions. He had been building this. Naruto sinks to one knee. He does not vomit, does not scream, does not collapse into some dramatic horror at what he has done. The reality is stranger than that, thinner, colder, more intimate. He feels shock, yes, and nausea, and a rising awareness that a line has been crossed forever. But beneath it there is something worse: understanding. If he had hesitated longer, he might be dead. If he had been softer, he might be dead. If he had tried to keep his hands clean in the way stories pretend is possible, he might be dead. That knowledge offers no comfort, only clarity. When he returns, Madara sees it immediately. Not the blood first, not the stiffness in his posture, the eyes. There is a difference in them now. Naruto says nothing at first. He places the recovered scroll case on the ground and waits. Madara studies him for a long moment. How many? 3, Naruto says. Shinobi? No. Madara nods once, as if confirming a calculation. Tell me. Naruto does. Every movement, every mistake, every decision. He recounts it clinically because anything else feels dangerous. If he lets emotion in too early, he is not sure he will be able to control what follows. Madara listens without interruption. When the story is done, silence lingers. Then, Naruto asks the question that has been burning in him since the forest. Does it stop feeling like this? Madara's expression gives away nothing. No. Naruto looks up sharply. The answer is not what he expected. Madara continues, voice low and steady. If it ever stops meaning something, watch yourself carefully. That is when you begin to decay. Naruto's hands tighten. Then what am I supposed to do with it? Carry it. The simplicity of the answer makes him angry. Just carry it? Yes. Madara steps closer, cane sinking lightly into the earth. You think killing is a test you pass once and leave behind. It is not. It is weight, sometimes necessary, never clean. The weak pretend otherwise, the monsters enjoy it. A shinobi worthy of the name learns to bear it without lying about what it costs. Naruto looks away. He had expected absolution or condemnation. A lesson that made the ugliness neat. Madara offers neither, only truth. And because of that, Naruto believes him. That night he does not sleep much. Every time his eyes close, the moment returns. Not his nightmare exactly, but his detail. The shift of balance, the shock in the man's face, the warmth on his skin. Morning finds him exhausted, quieter than usual. Madara does not reduce the training. If anything, he intensifies it. At first, Naruto resents that. Then, gradually, he understands the purpose. Madara is refusing to let the act define him. Refusing to let first blood become an altar around which the rest of his mind must circle forever. The world has moved, so must he. Still, something fundamental has changed. His movements become more economical after that mission. Less waste, less uncertainty. He no longer imagines combat as a domain where clean intentions matter. He has seen what panic does to men, seen how quickly ordinary fear becomes deadly force. His strategic thinking deepens not because he has grown colder, but because innocence has become harder to maintain. Madara notices all of it. "You are finally starting to understand sequence," he says during a sparring session weeks later. Naruto wipes blood from the corner of his mouth. Sequence? Violence is rarely one strike. It is a chain. Position creates pressure. Pressure creates panic. Panic creates openings. Children focus on impact. Adults learn to control what leads to it. Naruto thinks of the smugglers and says nothing. The next stretch of months turns Naruto into something Konoha would never willingly have built. His field tests increase. Some are surveillance. Some are retrieval. Some are simple endurance exercises stretched to absurd lengths. Once Madara leaves him with minimal supplies on the far side of rough country and tells him to return in 4 days without being tracked. Another time he sends him to observe a bandit camp and identify the leader by behavior alone. Naruto does, correctly. Madara says only, "Good, you are beginning to see hierarchy before speech." The body changes too. He grows leaner, harder, less visibly childlike in the ways that matter to a fighter. His chakra reserves deepen. Fire release becomes not just possible, but reliable. Shadow clone theory begins entering the edges of his training. His taijutsu sharpens into something unnervingly adaptable. Part Academy Foundation, part Madara's ruthless corrections, part Naruto's own fast learning instincts under pressure. He is still young, but now there are moments when even older shinobi, catching sight of him unexpectedly, feel something they cannot immediately explain. Not fear exactly, premonition. Meanwhile, Kakashi's presence on the edge of Naruto's life grows more difficult to ignore. The man begins appearing in places too often to be coincidence. At the academy grounds, near training posts, in conversations that feel casual until Naruto notices how closely he is being observed. There is caution in Kakashi, but also regret, and behind both of those something more dangerous, intention. Tsunade's shadow falls longer too, though in a different way. Do medical checkups suddenly insisted upon? Do records quietly pulled? Through pressure applied to village authorities who had preferred Naruto, remain administratively simple and emotionally neglected. Forces in Konoha are finally moving around him. Too late to shape his childhood, not too late to collide with what it has made. Madara understands the implications faster than anyone. His health, already fragile beneath layers of force and will, begins slipping in ways Naruto cannot ignore. Small pauses after exertion, a hand tightening on the cane a second too long. The occasional moment where the old man seems to retreat inward, not from weakness of mind, but from a body increasingly offended by the fact that he still commands it. Naruto sees these things and pretends not to. Madara sees him pretending. Neither speaks of it, because once spoken, it becomes real in a way neither is ready to face. That unspoken urgency bleeds into every lesson. Naruto can feel it now. The pace is no longer just demanding, it is accelerated. Madara is racing something. Time, perhaps, decay. The possibility that the future he is building into Naruto may have to stand on its own sooner than either of them wants. And so the lessons become denser. More history, more doctrine, more brutal honesty. Madara starts forcing Naruto to think beyond missions and survival toward legacy itself, toward what kind of force survives after the people who shaped it are gone, toward the difference between power as personal protection and power as architecture, toward the terrifying reality that legends are not born from talent alone, but from moments when private strength collides with public collapse. Naruto does not yet know what role he will play in any of that, but he can feel the direction of the road. He is no longer training to become capable. He is being prepared to matter. And in the world Madara understands, that is far more dangerous. By the end of this phase, the child who once sat at the edge of the forest fumbling through hand signs is gone in every way that matters. In his place stands someone faster, sharper, more difficult to read, someone who has already seen what violence costs and kept walking, someone carrying grief, secrecy, bloodline, and expectation in equal measure. Someone standing halfway between village and shadow, between inheritance and choice. The shinobi world does not know his name yet, but it is already moving toward him. And very soon, it will no longer be enough for Naruto to survive in hidden corners while older powers play their games around him. Very soon, the games themselves will begin closing in. The world does not close around Naruto all at once. It tightens. A rumor here, a glance held too long there, a mission report that vanishes from one desk and appears on another, a name spoken in confidence that somehow reaches ears it was never meant for. By now, Naruto understands that open threats are rarely the most dangerous kind. The shinobi world prefers pressure that can still be denied. And pressure is building everywhere. By the time he reaches the edge of true adolescence, Konoha is no longer merely aware of him in fragments. The village has begun to feel the shape of his existence, even if it still cannot define it. Instructors who once dismissed him now speak more carefully when he is near. Chunin, who barely remembered his face, now remembers performance on missions too precisely to be casual. The administration, never comfortable with variables it did not create, starts pulling records, rechecking seals, reviewing histories around the boy whose file should have remained simple and did not. Naruto senses this before anyone confirms it. He has been trained too thoroughly not to. The village is looking at me differently, he tells Madara one evening as they sit above the river, twilight turning the water iron gray beneath them. Madara does not ask how he knows. That means you have become harder to dismiss, he says. It means they're suspicious. Yes. Naruto's eyes narrow. You don't sound concerned? Madara looks out across the darkening current. Concern is useful only when it changes the next step. Paranoia wastes time. Adapt. That answer would have frustrated Naruto once. Now it only makes him think more carefully. Because adaptation no longer means surviving one fight or one mission. It means surviving attention, surviving politics, surviving a world where the most powerful people in a village can ruin a life without ever touching a weapon. That is when Madara begins shifting the lessons again. Not away from combat, but beyond it. He starts teaching Naruto how conspiracies breathe, how power hides, how institutions preserve themselves by distributing guilt so widely that no individual ever feels responsible enough to stop the machine. They go through old decisions in Konoha's history, clan tensions, the aftermath of the Uchiha massacre, the treatment of Jinchuriki, the way elders speak of stability as though it is a god demanding blood. Never assume cruelty requires hatred, Madara tells him. Most of the worst things in this world are done by people who believe they are being practical. Naruto leans against the training post, bruised and sweating from a spar that ended less than 5 minutes earlier. That almost sounds worse. It is worse, Madara replies. Hatred burns hot and announces itself. Practicality wears the face of necessity and sleeps well. Naruto carries that line with him for days, because once spoken, he can see it everywhere. In the village elders who made his childhood administratively convenient. In instructors who never asked why an orphan with his background had been left half feral at the margins of care. In shinobi who knew enough to suspect he was important and chose silence because silence was easier than action. The truth is no longer just that Naruto was neglected, it is that he was processed, sorted, managed, contained, and once he understands that, some old wounded part of him stops asking whether Konoha failed by accident. That shift changes the way he looks at almost everyone. Not colder exactly, sharper. Kakashi feels it first. By now, the silver-haired Jonin has moved from peripheral presence to something stranger, something more unstable. He still does not step in openly, not at first, but he begins creating moments, training observations that last too long, casual questions that are too specific, small acts of interference that would mean little in isolation and a great deal when taken together. Naruto recognizes all of them for what they are. An attempt, late, awkward, guilty, but real. The first time they speak alone, without pretense, it happens near a quiet training ground after dusk. Kakashi has just watched Naruto finish a set of drills he should not have been able to execute that cleanly without private instruction from someone far above academy standards. For a while, neither speaks. Then Kakashi says, "You move like someone's been teaching you not to waste effort." Naruto wipes a kunai clean on a cloth and keeps his expression still. Maybe I pay attention. Kakashi's visible eye curves with something that is not amusement. "You do." A beat passes. Then, more quietly, "I should have paid attention sooner." The sentence hangs between them. Naruto does not need it explained. For the first time, Kakashi is not talking as a jonin assessing a promising shinobi. He is talking as someone carrying a failure personally. What exactly do you think you missed? Naruto asks. Kakashi looks at him with that same tired honesty Naruto has come to distrust less than polished kindness. More than I want to admit, it is not an apology, not fully, but it is close enough to be dangerous. Because Naruto finds that part of him, some younger and more abandoned part, wants to hear the rest, wants to know what might have happened if the adults tied to his parents had moved faster, looked harder, demanded more. Madara sees the change in him immediately. You are thinking about Hatake, he says the next time they train. Naruto does not bother asking how he knows. He knew them. Yes. He regrets something. Yes. Naruto's jaw tightens. Should that matter? Madara is silent for a moment, then answers with a precision that feels almost reluctant. Regret matters only if it leads to action, but action taken too late still has consequences. Never confuse lateness with irrelevance. That is not the answer Naruto expected. He had expected contempt, a dismissal, another reminder that Konoha's people act only after damage is done. Instead, Madara gives him something far more difficult. Permission to think, permission to judge for himself. That is when Naruto starts realizing the old man is doing something he never fully named before, not just teaching him what to believe, but hardening him against being easy to own, even by Madara himself. That realization matters when the next set of names enter his life. Karin comes first as rumor, then report, then reality. Madara had spoken of bloodlines and scattered branches of old history before, but never with detail careless enough to map. Now those scattered names begin to converge. An Uzumaki girl, sharp-tongued, keen senses, pulled through the margins of conflict in ways that would have destroyed someone less stubborn. Naruto hears about her in pieces, through intercepted movement, whispered affiliations, and the broader storm beginning to gather around Orochimaru, root, and the rot that always seems to pool beneath powerful men who believe themselves indispensable. By the time Naruto actually meets her, the world has already arranged the encounter like a test. It happens on a retrieval operation that becomes more complicated by the hour. What begins as surveillance around a movement corridor tied to missing nin networks turns into a violent scramble when a smaller cell breaks off with a prisoner they should not have had. Naruto tracks them through rain-slicked terrain, reading the ground the way Madara taught him, and reaches the temporary holding site just as the guards are preparing to move. The girl is chained, thin, furious, exhausted, but unmistakably unbroken. Even before she sees him, Naruto knows. Not who she is exactly, but what? The chakra in her is different from anyone else he has felt in years. Dense, bright, stubborn in a way that hits something old in his own blood hard enough to feel like recognition. One of the guards turns too slowly. Naruto is on him before the shout fully leaves the man's throat. What follows is fast and ugly, not dramatic, not noble, just efficient violence in close quarters under bad light. Naruto drops the first two before the others understand what is happening. The third manages a jutsu that tears bark from the trees but misses its mark because Naruto is already inside the man's angle. By the time the last guard falls, the rain has turned the clearing into mud and blood and broken restraint seals. The girl watches him like she is deciding whether rescue is merely a different cage. Naruto kneels by the chains. You can either trust me for the next 10 seconds, he says, or wait for whoever sent them to come back. She glares. That's a terrible sales pitch. Then decide quickly. To his surprise, she snorts once, short, bitter, alive. Fine, she says. But if you're another creep with a lab and a god complex, I'm stabbing you the first chance I get. Naruto almost smiles as he breaks the seal lock. Reasonable. That is how Karin enters his life. Not as romance. Not yet. As recognition under pressure. As blood meeting blood in a world that has used both of them badly. What comes after is messier than either of them expects. Karin is suspicious, volatile, brilliant in ways that hide behind abrasiveness. Naruto, for his part, is not used to people who can look at him and immediately notice what he tries not to show. But from the beginning, there is an understanding between them that does not need to be explained aloud. Both know what it means to be valued for utility before personhood. Both know how institutions and monsters speak the language of necessity. Both have learned in different ways that survival sharpens but also isolates. Madara's reaction when Naruto brings her to one of the outer safe points is impossible to miss. He does not greet her warmly, he studies her, and for the first time in a very long while, the old man's mask slips just enough for Naruto to see something dangerously close to grief beneath it. Uzumaki, Madara says. Karin's chin lifts at once, and his gaze flicks to Naruto, then back to her. Nothing, yet. That yet hangs in the air with all the weight of old history. The weeks that follow widen everything. Karin becomes not just an addition to Naruto's orbit, but a catalyst. Through her knowledge, her instincts, and the trail of damage behind her, new pieces of the larger board reveal themselves. Root is moving more aggressively than anyone in Konoha admits. Orochimaru's influence lingers in places the village publicly condemns and privately exploits. The mist is growing unstable in ways that suggest manipulation, not random brutality. Old clan interests are stirring under the pressure of future conflict. For the first time, Naruto begins seeing how the private cruelties of his childhood connect to a much larger architecture of power. He is not an isolated tragedy. He is one expression of a pattern. That is when the phrase threads or chains becomes real to him, though he never says it aloud. Every relationship around him starts asking the same question in a different form. Is this bond something that steadies him, or something meant to bind him? Kakashi's attention, thread or chain? Tsunade's concern, thread or chain? Madara's training, legacy, and blood, thread or chain? Even Karen, with her fierce honesty and matching scars, thread or chain? Naruto does not answer quickly, because by now he knows the worst chains often feel like belonging right until the moment they tighten. Then the betrayals begin. Not all at once, not with dramatic declarations, with fractures, a contact. Konoha trusted sells movement information to a competing faction. A mission route is leaked. A supposed ally from the village side tries to secure Naruto under administrative authority that feels too close to abduction for his liking. Someone in the background has started connecting his unusual growth, his bloodline anomalies, and the invisible gaps in his record. They do not know everything, but they know enough to become dangerous. One of the ugliest confrontations comes when Naruto is cornered not by enemies in rogue colors, but by shinobi wearing the leaf. They tell him it is for his protection. He hears root between the syllables. The man leading them speaks calmly, almost kindly, as if that makes the threat cleaner. There are concerns about outside influence, irregular development, and your contact network. You need to come with us. Naruto looks at the formation around him, the concealed angles, the careful attempt to make force sound procedural. No, he says. The man's expression barely shifts. This is not a request. Naruto's voice stays level. Then stop pretending it is. The fight is brief because Naruto has no intention of letting it become a negotiation. He breaks the lead man's stance, uses the moment of shock to collapse the flank, then vanishes through the exact escape vector they failed to cover because they assumed he would respond like a cornered asset rather than a trained hunter. When he finally stops moving, miles later, the truth settles over him with terrifying calm. Konoha is no longer merely late in trying to claim him. It is willing to use the language of safety to do it. When he tells Madara, the old man is neither surprised nor triumphant. Now you see the shape of it, he says. Naruto's hands clench. I already saw enough? No, Madara replies, gaze hard as stone. Before, you saw injury. Now you see method. That is the difference, and it changes everything. The world keeps widening after that. The bloody mist ceases to be a distant horror story and starts becoming a living strategic concern. Through scattered intelligence and overlapping interests, Naruto finds himself drawn into conflicts that prove just how far the rod extends beyond Fire Country. Villages do not merely fight wars. They cultivate them, export them, manage them like weather. And somewhere inside all of that, the larger picture begins coming into focus. Not every faction wants Naruto dead. Some want him loyal. Some want him contained. Some want his bloodline. Some want what he might symbolize if revealed at the wrong time. Others simply understand that a shinobi carrying Uzumaki vitality, Uchiha inheritance, Madara's private education, and growing independence could someday alter balances far larger than one village can control. He's becoming geopolitically inconvenient. And once that happens, childhood ends for good. The final turn comes not on a battlefield, but in conversation. Late one night, after a cascade of compromised routes and broken confidences has made sleep impossible, Naruto sits with Karen in the remains of a safe house half, collapsed by old shelling and neglect. Rain taps steadily against loose wood overhead. Neither of them has the energy to pretend they are less exhausted than they are. Karen breaks the silence first. You know they're all going to keep trying, right? Naruto glances at her. Who? She gives him a flat look. Everyone. Leaf, rogues, mad scientists, patriotic hypocrites, emotionally constipated mentors, creepy old war legends. Pick a category. Despite everything, Naruto lets out a breath that almost becomes a laugh. Karen's expression softens, just a little. You're not a person they look at and see a person, she says. Not at first. You know that. I know. But you're still deciding what to do about it. That lands because it is true. He has spent years learning how to survive systems, evade control, and resist becoming easy to use. But survival is no longer enough. The board has widened too much. Too many other lives are now tangled in the same machinery. Karen studies him in the dim light. If you keep acting like you can stay between everything forever, the choice gets made for you. Naruto turns that over slowly. Because that is the real threshold, isn't it? Not whether he is strong enough, whether he is ready to stop living only in reaction. By the time dawn begins bleeding into the broken windows, he knows something irreversible has happened inside him. The betrayals, the reunions, the pressure from Konoha, the widening pattern of corruption and fear, all of it has done what no single lesson ever could. It has forced him to understand that he cannot remain a hidden prodigy orbiting larger powers. Sooner or later, he will have to become one. And somewhere behind all of this, like a storm still beyond the horizon but already shaking the air, the final reckoning is gathering speed. Madara knows it. Kakashi suspects it. Konoha is stumbling toward it. The wider shinobi world, fractured and hungry, is already making room for it, whether it understands that or not. Naruto has spent years learning how not to be claimed. What comes next will ask something harder. It will ask what kind of force he intends to become once he chooses to step forward at last. By the time Naruto returns to Madara after the safe house conversation with Karin, the decision has already begun forming inside him. Not the details, not the method, something deeper. For years he has lived as a figure between worlds, the hidden child in the forest, the orphan no one explained, the student who learned more in silence than others did under banners and instructors, the heir of a bloodline buried under lies, the boy shaped by Madara's fire and Konoha's neglect in equal measure. He has survived by moving between systems without giving himself fully to any of them. But survival is no longer the same as direction, and direction, now, is everything. Madara sees the change before Naruto speaks. The old man is seated beneath the overhang of the outer shelter, one hand resting over the head of his cane, his breathing quieter than it used to be, and somehow heavier for that. Age has continued its work without asking permission. The force inside him is still immense. The shell containing it is beginning to lose the argument. Naruto stops a few steps away. "They tried to take me," he says. Madara's eyes lift. Unreadable. "Leaf?" "Yes." "For protection?" Naruto's mouth hardens. That was the word they used. Madara nods once, not in approval, not in satisfaction, but with the calm of a man hearing confirmation of something he had long accounted for. "And now?" Naruto is silent for a moment. Rainwater still clings to the hem of his cloak. The journey back had been hard, but the harder distance is internal. "And now," he says, "I'm done waiting for everyone else to decide what I am." The words settle into the space between them like a seal finally closing. Madara studies him for a long time, not as teacher, not as strategist, as blood. That matters. Because for all the doctrine, for all the severity, for all the years spent turning Naruto into something the world could neither predict nor safely contain, this was always the question beneath the training. Not whether Naruto could be sharpened. He could. Not whether he could endure. He had. The real question was whether, when the moment came, he would choose out of fear or clarity. Madara sees the answer now. Clarity, not perfect, not pure, but real. "Good," he says. Naruto exhales through his nose. "That's all? For now." Madara's gaze shifts toward the dark line of trees. Decision is not the same as plan. "Sit." Naruto obeys. What follows over the next several days is less a conversation than the final architecture of a worldview. Madara no longer teaches him in fragments, no more partial disclosures, no more waiting until Naruto asks exactly the right question. The old man unfolds the board in full: village alignments, clan remnants, route contingencies, Orochimaru's surviving networks, the fractures widening in the mist, the way every major power is beginning to reposition around instability they do not yet understand. At the center of it all is one brutal truth. The world is preparing for a convergence, whether it calls it that or not, and Naruto is already part of it. "You still think in terms of avoiding capture," Madara says while marking positions across a rough map spread over the floorboards. "That is the instinct of prey made competent. Useful, but limited." Naruto's eyes track the placements. "And what should I be thinking?" Madara taps the map once. "Initiative, pressure, sequence. You have spent years surviving structures. It is time to force them to react to you." The sentence would once have sounded dangerously close to arrogance. Now it sounds like strategy. Because Naruto understands the distinction. Madara is not telling him to chase power for spectacle. He is telling him to stop allowing every move to be framed by someone else's threat. To choose ground, choose timing, choose terms. That is when the final phase truly begins. Karen becomes part of it almost immediately. Not because Madara welcomes her in any sentimental sense, but because refusing her importance would be idiotic, and Madara has never confused harshness with stupidity. Her sensory abilities, political instincts, and absolute refusal to be quietly handled make her invaluable. More than that, she sees lines other people miss, the emotional contour of a room, the exhaustion hidden beneath chakra signatures, the quiet desperation that turns lieutenants into traitors and loyalists into liabilities. The three of them form an uneasy core. Madara, old fire wrapped in failing flesh. Naruto, sharpened inheritance standing on the edge of public consequence. Karin, furious continuity from another ruined branch of the same vast wounded tree. Together they stop reacting and start moving. The first targets are not villages, they are mechanisms. A route transport line moving sealed research through false customs logs. A black archive containing bloodline records collected under the language of national security. A broker cell routing children with unusual chakra profiles toward buyers who call themselves patriots when it is useful and pragmatists when it is not. Naruto strikes them one by one, never in the same pattern twice. Some operations end in sabotage, some in theft, some in bodies left where the right people will find them and understand what message has been delivered. Not random violence. Deliberate pressure. Soon the whispers begin. A shadow moving between borders. A red-haired censor who can detect ambushes before they close. A young shinobi whose fire burns too hot and too precisely to belong to any ordinary lineage. An heir. A ghost. A weapon. A warning. Naruto hears the rumors and lets them spread. That is new. For most of his life, concealment meant safety. Now selective revelation becomes strategy. The world does not need to know everything, but it needs to know enough to hesitate. Kakashi finds him before Konoha officially does. Of course he does. It happens at the edge of a ruined shrine outside Fire Country, after Naruto and Karin finish dismantling another courier line tied to route intermediaries. Kakashi appears in the broken stone path as if he has been there the whole time, hands relaxed, visible eyes steady. Naruto does not reach for a weapon immediately. That is perhaps the most dangerous sign of all. "You're making a lot of powerful people nervous," Kakashi says. Naruto glances at the shrine roof where Karin remains out of sight, but very much within range. Maybe they should be. Kakashi does not disagree. For a moment, wind moves through the cracked cedar beams overhead. The old place smells like rain, ash, and old prayer. Then Kakashi says, "They're going to move on you openly soon." Naruto's voice stays level. "You sound like you came to warn me." "I did." "Why?" The question lands harder than accusation would have. Kakashi lets the silence sit before answering. "Because too many people failed you when it still could have changed something. Because I was one of them. Because I'm tired of watching the people who make clean decisions on paper leave blood behind them and call it governance." Naruto studies him. There is no performance in the words, no attempt to sentimentalize the damage, just honesty, late but real. "You can't fix my childhood," Naruto says. Kakashi's eye lowers slightly. "I know. You can't fix what they did. I know. Then what are you here for?" Kakashi meets his gaze. "To make sure the next part doesn't belong entirely to the same people." That answer matters. Not because it heals anything, because it places him, not above guilt, not outside failure, but against the machinery at last, in a meaningful way. Naruto nods once, small, cautious, not forgiveness, not yet, but not rejection either. That single moment shifts more than either of them says aloud. Because when Konoha finally moves in force, it no longer does so across a simple board. Tsunade's hand becomes visible soon after. By then, the fifth Hokage has assembled enough fragments to understand two essential facts. First, Naruto is no longer a problem to be administratively contained. Second, every faction that still sees him that way is about to drag the village into a conflict it may not survive intact. Unlike the elders, unlike Root, unlike the quieter operators who still think in terms of possession and leverage, Tsunade knows what happens when powerful people mistake a human life for an asset category. She has seen too many bodies for that illusion. When the council fractures over what to do, Tsunade refuses to sign off on retrieval by coercion. Danzo's side argues for immediate containment. Several elders dress fear in procedural language. Others speak of national risk, bloodline uncertainty, outside influence, destabilization. Tsunade hears all of it and then breaks the room in half with one sentence. "He is not an object you misplaced." The council does not recover. That does not end the conflict. It only drags it into the open. The final convergence begins the week after. Root moves anyway. Danzo, convinced that history is written by those willing to act before consensus, deploys a quiet strike package under layered deniability. Their goal is not assassination, it is seizure. Secure Naruto, isolate Karin, eliminate outer influence, sever unknown control mechanisms. In Danzo's mind, this is not villainy, it is necessity. Madara would have called that the worst kind of evil. Naruto calls it exactly what it is, the moment he sees the formation closing around the ravine, crossing where he and Karin have been lured by falsified intelligence. An abduction with patriotic branding. The fight that follows is the first true public declaration of what he has become. Root attacks like a machine, disciplined, layered, ruthless, trained to turn hesitation into death. But Naruto is no longer a variable they can file under youth, Jinchuriki, or damaged orphan. He reads the first feint before it finishes, breaks the terrain to collapse their angle, uses fire not for spectacle but for controlled denial of movement. Karin calls positions from the ridge with terrifying accuracy, turning their hidden flank into a kill zone. 2 root operatives go down before the third understands the trap has reversed. Then Danzo's backup cell arrives, and with it, Kakashi. Not against Naruto, against the operation. That is the moment the concealed war inside Konoha explodes into view. Steel, flame, clone pressure, wind slicing through broken stone, root moving to secure witnesses. Kakashi cutting through his own village's shadow soldiers with the exhausted fury of a man who has finally chosen which side of his regret he intends to die on. Naruto does not have time to reflect on the symbolism. He only has time to survive. Then the battlefield changes again, because Madara arrives. No fanfare, no speech, just pressure. Old, monstrous, unmistakable pressure that falls across the ravine hard enough to make even trained killers hesitate. By now, his body is failing openly. Every step costs him. Every breath is part willpower, part war against collapse. But the chakra that rolls off him is still enough to remind everyone present that legends do not become myths by accident. Danzo's people falter. For the first time, some of them truly understand what kind of hidden hand has been shaping Naruto from beyond the village's map. Madara's eyes move across the battlefield once, assessing, dismissing, choosing. Enough, he says. It should not be possible for one word to have that much force. But it does. The final conflict is not cleanly divided after that. Too many players, too many betrayals, too much history arriving at once. Root's operation breaks into running engagements across the ravine and the surrounding forest. Konoha shinobi, loyal to Tsunade, begin intercepting Danzo's secondary detachments. Independent hunter teams drawn by rumor and bounty arrive at exactly the worst time, hoping to profit from chaos and instead being consumed by it. Naruto moves through all of it with a terrible kind of focus. This is what Madara was building, not a brawler, not a banner hero, a force able to read collapse as it unfolds and shape the flow inside it. He sees sequence, break support, blind the sensor, split the commander from the SEALs team, deny escape where pursuit costs less than letting the threat live, protect Karin without caging her, keep Kakashi alive long enough for his interference to matter. Adjust for Madara's weakening condition without insulting the old man by acknowledging it too openly. The battle becomes revelation in motion. Every lesson, every loss, every hard truth about institutions, necessity, blood, grief, and freedom comes alive here. And at the center of it stands Naruto, no longer between worlds in the old helpless sense, but bridging them by force. Then Danzo himself enters the fight. The old Warhawk does not come as a cackling tyrant or a theatrical monster. He comes exactly as Madara warned men like him always do, convinced, controlled, certain that history will thank him for whatever brutality he can package as preservation. He looks at Naruto and sees risk, Madara and sees unfinished catastrophe, Kakashi and sees weakness, Karin and sees a useful remainder. That is what seals him. Because Naruto has spent too long being looked at that way. Their confrontation is brief in words and long in consequence. Danzo speaks of village stability, existential threats, inherited dangers, the burden of leadership. Naruto hears a lifetime of processed cruelty inside every syllable. You would cage the future, Naruto says, and call it protection. Danzo's answer is cold. The future does not belong to children with power and grievances. Naruto's fire answers before his mouth does. The clash is vicious. Danzo fights like a man who has turned his body into an arsenal of contingency. Seals, wind pressure, hidden reserves, tactics built around sacrificing pieces to preserve control. But he is built for domination through leverage and secrecy. Naruto is built, now, to break that exact kind of architecture. Karin tears through Danzo's support readouts. Kakashi cuts off external reinforcement. Madara, even on the edge of collapse, strips away the illusion that fear and myth belong only to the old generation, and Naruto finishes what the rest begin, not with spectacle, with decision. When the final opening appears, he takes it cleanly. No hesitation, no hatred-drunk excess, just outcome. Danzo falls, and with him, something larger cracks. Not all corruption, not all cruelty. The shinobi world is too old and too hungry for one death to redeem it. But a central lie breaks in that moment. The lie that men like Danzo are inevitable, that their methods are ugly but necessary, that the future must always be secured through the secret management of children, bloodlines, and fear. The battlefield stills slowly after that. Rain begins again, light at first. Kakashi is bleeding from the shoulder and too tired to hide it. Karin is shaking with adrenaline but standing. Around them, what remains of Root's force has either fled, surrendered, or died in service to an order no one will publicly claim. Madara is still upright. Barely. Naruto turns toward him and knows at once that the end has arrived. The old man's breath is wrong now. Too thin, too distant. As if the body has already started stepping back from the argument and only pride is delaying its final answer. Naruto crosses the broken ground without speaking. Madara watches him come with eyes still sharp enough to cut. "You won," the old man says. Naruto stops in front of him. "We won." Madara's mouth shifts by the faintest degree. "Do not dull your own edges with false humility. It does not suit you." Under any other circumstances, Naruto might almost smile. Now he cannot. Around them the world has gone strangely quiet, as if even the survivors understand something private is happening in the space between them. Naruto kneels. For a second, neither speaks. Then Madara says, more softly than Naruto has ever heard from him, "I taught you to survive my world." Naruto's throat tightens. Madara's hand lifts heavy now, unsteady, and settles once against the side of Naruto's head, fingers in his hair like a gesture remembered from another life. "You will have to build your own." That is the closest he comes to saying everything else. Pride, regret, love, in the hard and terrible form men like him can manage. Naruto bows his head once, unable to trust his voice. When Madara's hand falls away, the silence that follows tells him the rest. For a long time he does not move. When he finally rises, something inside him has shifted for the last time, not into emptiness, into shape. The aftermath takes months. The political settlement longer. Tsunade survives the internal fracture of Konoha only by forcing truths into daylight that the village has avoided for years. Root is dismantled in public and hunted in private where necessary. Records are opened, some elders resign. Others cling to power until it is stripped from them piece by piece. None of it is clean. None of it is complete. But the old machinery can no longer pretend invisibility. Kakashi, for his part, remains in Naruto's orbit, not as replacement family, because some absences cannot be repaired that way, but as a man finally choosing his duty without hiding behind professionalism. Their relationship is uneven, sometimes tense, sometimes almost easy, always honest enough to matter. Karin stays. That surprises no one who understands either of them well. She stays not because the world suddenly becomes kind, but because for the first time she has found a place in its future that is not built entirely on exploitation. With Naruto, she remains exactly what she has always been, fierce, abrasive, brilliant, impossible to patronize, but now also foundational. Not a rescued side figure, a co-architect, and Naruto himself becomes impossible to categorize. To some in Konoha, he is still a warning. To others, he is proof that the village survived its own worst instincts only because someone it failed came back strong enough to force the issue. Beyond Fire Country, stories about him travel faster than diplomacy. Some call him the last true heir of old blood. Some call him a destabilizer. Some, quietly, call him something much more dangerous to entrenched power. A savior. Naruto never fully accepts the word. He knows too much for that. He has killed, broken structures by force, carried legacies sharpened by violence and grief. He understands now that salvation without cost is the kind of fantasy sold to people who will never be asked to pay for it. And yet he also knows this. The line between destroyer and savior is often not power. It is what you build after the walls come down. That becomes his work. Not peace in the childish sense. Not a world without conflict. He is not naive enough for that. But a different architecture. One less dependent on secrecy, inherited fear, and the conversion of children into national property. A harder peace. A more honest one. He does not build it alone. No one ever truly does. But he stands at the center of its first foundation stones, because he is one of the few alive who understands every side of what it is meant to replace. The orphanage child. The hidden student. The grandson of Madara. The son of dead heroes. The shinobi Konoha tried to process and failed to contain. The boy who learned that legacy is not what the past leaves in your hands. It is what you choose to make with it. And that, in the end, is the real answer to the question this timeline has been asking from the beginning. What if Naruto had been raised in the shadows by Madara Uchiha? Not simply that he would become stronger. Not simply that Konoha would suffer for its blindness. Not simply that the shinobi world would face a different kind of force. It is this. He would grow into someone who understood power, loss, blood, institutions, and freedom too clearly to become anyone's weapon for long. Someone who could inherit hatred without reproducing it unchanged. Someone who could be shaped by a monster of history and still choose not to let history end there. That is how one buried bloodline, one hidden teacher, one neglected child, and one decision to stop waiting could reshape everything. Not by erasing the damage, by refusing to let the damage be final. And in stories like these, that is what makes alternate timelines worth following to the end. If you enjoyed this journey through Naruto's hidden legacy, be sure to like the video and subscribe to Fanfics in a Nutshell for more cinematic what-ifs, alternate timelines, and stories that change everything.